This is Twyla's show here. You know this.
Back pedal.
Didn't say A, B. I know my place in the food chain.
Alan may not be in swatting distance where you are.
There are some. There. Junkyard.
Game on.
You ready, people?
Only a few here. In the hall.
I'd like to open this council meeting of the December 20th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, Twyla.
Is roll call. Councillor Albert.
Here.
Councillor Colby.
Here.
Councillor Ward.
Here.
Councillor Crawford.
Here.
Councillor Lunt.
Here.
Councillor Crafts. Is he excused?
Yes.
Councillor Brunel.
Yes, here.
Next item.
Under Good News and Recognition, Order 2016-267, the 2016 Lisbon High School football team proclamation. We invite the football team in. You need a motion?
I need a motion.
And
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Absolutely.
Order passed 6-0. And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the Lisbon High School football team has made the community of Lisbon proud through its accomplishments in claiming the 2016 Campbell Conference Championship and representing the Class D South Division in the State Football Championship. Whereas in their playoff journey, the Greyhounds defeated rival Oak Hill 42-9 and later overcame their only regular season loss to defeat Winthrop 20-17. Through last-second heroics and hard-fought determination. Whereas the success of these students-athletes was based on continual improvement and constant effort made by every player on the team. That team mentally was stressed by their longtime coach, Dick Meitenhand, in his final season, who was a major force in their successful march toward capturing the conference championship. Now, therefore, we, the Town Council of the Town of Lisbon, on this 20th day of December 2016, would like to congratulate these students for their outstanding achievements. Well done.
Yeah, there we go. We just I want to get a picture of everybody together.
Oh, you got to get that into there. Come on, guys.
all right, get up tight. Like you know each other.
There we go. Yeah.
Thanks for a great season, fellas.
Any other good news and recognition tonight?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. First, I'd like to welcome the new councilor. Welcome back, Councilor Lunt. Appreciate it. My name is Ross Cunningham with Positive Change Lisbon. I look forward to continuing the great relationship we have with the council and making our town a better place to live. I'd like to take a minute tonight to thank the town for its support of Very Merry Main Street. It happened a couple weeks ago. We had close to 200 people out there singing and then walking up and down Main Street. We had 22 stores that participated. We're open with some sort of treats and hot chocolate. And I have to point out, Manager Barnes, that our most popular location was the library. So thank you so very much for setting aside the money to make sure they were open that evening. Our second most popular place was the fire department, so the town cleaned up and getting visitors into their locations. And I really would like to specifically recognize Chief Hagan and the police department. Their contributions that night were phenomenal. We've had some concerns with the wagon turning down onto 196, and they provided officers to not only escort the wagon every time it turned onto 196, but they also were able to close off Lower Main Street for us and let it be pedestrian-free for the whole 2 hours of the evening. So just a public thank you from PCL, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Any other good news and recognition tonight? Next item, 12.
The under public hearings, the automobile graveyard permits for Houston's Auto Salvage and Campbell's Used Auto Parts. Once the chair opens the public hearing, those in the audience who wish to speak may address the council chair.
I'd like to open that hearing. See the Campbells are in the audience tonight. Anything you guys want to say?
Give us a permit.
That's what I expected from you tonight. Yeah. Anybody else? I'll close the hearing.
Okay. The
Next
next item is the general assistance maximums, Appendix A through F.
Anybody like to speak on this item's behalf? Yep.
Judy's going to come up.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Judy.
I get it.
Hi, we're just here, this is just something we do every year. The state gives us the guidelines and we just adopt them.
Well said.
For any questions, you're all set?
Judy Goddard, our
Yeah,
general assistance, and thank you, Judy.
okay. Do I need to be here for the next part?
What's that?
Do I need to be here for the next?
You want to see how the vote goes, but if not,
No,
I-
I'd rather work on it, give me three.
okay.
Awesome.
I understand completely. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'll close the public hearing. This next item I'd actually like to take out of order. I would like to do the public hearing for the medical marijuana ordinance and the vote on that, the two last items, to get the rest of the agenda taken care of tonight. If anybody has any objections to that, that's my recommendation. Seeing none, move on to the next item, please.
Under audience participation and response for agenda items, at this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward to address items or issues that are on the agenda.
Anyone? No, I moved the public hearing to that specifically to the end, just try to get the rest of the order. But if anything on the agenda that anybody else would like to actually speak upon, by all means, the podium is open. Seeing none, moving on.
The next item is the consent agenda. Any councilor wishing to have an item removed may do so now. Items removed from the consent agenda would be considered next. Seeing none, Order 2016-268 to approve the accounts payable and payroll warrants 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, and 84, along with the minutes of December 6, 2016, and the automobile graveyard permits for Houston's Auto Salvage and Campbell's Used Auto Parts.
Motion?
Make the motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Next item, please.
Under Council Orders, Ordinances, and Resolutions, Order 2016-269, the adoption of GA maximums, Appendix A through F, as presented.
I need a motion.
Make the motion.
I'll second.
All in
Roll
favor?
call. Yeah, it's a roll call
Roll
vote.
call.
Yep.
Okay.
So, Councilor Albert,
Yay.
Councilor Crawford,
Yes.
Councilor Crafts is absent, Councilor Ward,
Yes.
Councilor Lunt,
Yes.
Councilor Brunel,
Yes.
and Councilor Colby.
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
Next item, Toil.
Order 2016-278. This would be the medical marijuana, so you want to move that
Yes,
to the
that'll
end?
be after the hearing.
All right. So it would be Order 2016-271, Town Departments, the Christmas tree schedule.
We're just merely asking to close the transfer station and the library department early on Christmas Eve, to close at noon. And all the employees that would be affected would have to use accrued vacation, holiday, or comp time.
Just one question on that. If somebody doesn't have enough accrued comp time or PTO time, would they just take it as unpaid?
Yes.
Okay, but they would be
That,
given
we
the...
don't have that instance, but yes, that's.
They would be given the... Okay, that's great news. I just wanted to understand that a little bit better. Thank you.
Motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
Was that Chris?
Chris.
Counselor
Mr.
Crawford?
Crawford.
Okay.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item, 12.
Order 2016-272, the MDOT third-party agreements.
Good evening. In your packet, I believe we received a copy of the long-awaited three-party agreements between the DOT, ATRC, or ABCOG, and soon to be us to sign them. These are for projects on Main Street, as well as the intersection of Main Street and 196. We actually came to the council in October a year ago and got permission to sign these agreements, but they finally showed up. And the dollar figures were a little bit different than what we were originally approved for, so we're back again to discuss it. Unfortunately, I don't have much of a firm schedule at this point. I was informed last Thursday that DOT was originally going to design these projects in-house, and they've since passed it off to a consultant, and this consultant has been selected, I believe, and so we should be getting scheduling information for them hopefully very shortly. Some of the timing is why we haven't had any schedule updates as well, is because they can't technically have a consultant until there's a three-party agreement. So they've already gone through their process on that end to select one. We just need to sign these and move on. You'll see in the memo that I provided the breakdowns of what the town's estimated municipal costs will be for each of the projects. And originally, we had them break it down to do just preliminary engineering and right-of-way expenses, so that way we could stay under the original $100,000 per year or per contract allocation that we were allowed to. With that change, there's none of these projects that would approach the new limit, so we'd be able to move forward basically based on the council's approval.
You're talking the new limit being the 250, right?
Correct.
Okay, good.
What do we get for the additional scope?
Pardon?
What do we get for that additional scope change?
The only number that I believe that changed was, I don't remember. I want to say it was the intersection improvement project that was increased. Originally, I think there was a cap in the minutes that said of up to 50,000, but that's increased to 100,000 now. I don't think anything's changed. I think it's just that the whole project now is listed out to be a $100,000 total match from the town.
Okay.
And I think originally, because it was part of that confusion back when we were going through this, trying to keep things within our authority, that it was we were only going to pay for preliminary engineering and right away, and then go to the voters. So that way, if the voters just didn't approve the matching funds, we wouldn't be on the hook for the entire project cost. We would just have to deal with the initial engineering part of it. But I don't think that's going to be an issue at this point.
Any reluctance in signing them?
No. We've been waiting for a year.
Any chances the numbers change again?
I would probably be willing to guarantee that the first project is going to change. The one that's originally slated for $725,000, the project we asked for right around the same time I started here in 2001. So it's changed now from what was going to be a mill and fill to basically full depth reconstruction. And this is the portion from Route 196 to Houston Street where we've discussed, ongoing that there's going to be sidewalk drainage improvements, that sort of thing. So it's unlikely that there's enough funding in that pin. Our understanding is that originally they were talking about trying to do all the project at one time based on some information that we've received. It looks like they'll probably bid out from Houston Street to the urban compact line, which is just past Summer Street, first, and then probably tag along with the other one. But that's going to require additional funding from ATRC and the state and federal government as well. So we'll see. I mean, our percentage stays the same. It's just the total project cost will end up going up.
So regardless of cost increase from this point out, once we hit our max, we're at what we have to contribute. Because I'm seeing that 10%, that just makes me nervous. If we're going to start climbing and climbing and climbing
Well,
with no cap.
we'll have to. What's going to happen is once they get through preliminary design, we'll have a lot more information. They'll have an engineer's estimate that they'll be able to present at the public hearing that they'll do, and that if it's anything like the bridge project on Mill Street, that's going to happen at least a year in advance of them getting ready to advertise the project. So I don't have the information for you now. I mean, our amount is definitely, to see the project through construction, we will have to contribute more than what's on here.
Okay. Fair enough.
Thank you, Ryan.
But we have what we need for this coming budget session and more.
I believe we have more than what we need at this point in the current fiscal budget.
Any other questions for Ryan?
Well, just for the sake of informing the public, we paid 10% of the cost of this, and the states and the federal government pays the other 90%, correct? Roughly.
Sort of AVCOG pays,
AVCOG,
or
right,
ATRC, and it's,
Yeah.
but it's all comes.
Right,
that
the
money's
town of
actually-
Lisbon only pays 10% of the
Correct.
cost of this, and we think anyone who's driven over those roads knows they're in really dire shape. That Main Street, outer Main Street, is really bad and needs to be fixed.
Yep.
This is the big one. This is the DOT.
ATRC has signed their portion of the contract. I received that via email.
Cool. I need a motion.
Make that motion.
Need a second.
Second.
We got our first and second. All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item, Twyla?
Order 2016-273, Hasty Street, winter maintenance.
I have enough deeds to pass out. Do you guys want them?
Sure.
Sure, yeah.
Start right there.
Hey,
Thank you, Mr. Judd.
we don't ever get enough paperwork. Come on now.
This property, this is a deed of the town owning Hasty Street. Back when that was adopted by the town of Lisbon, that was called the Newley County Road, which basically was Webster, Hasty Street, out to the old landfill, down to Cotton Road to Lewiston, out to Woodland Club, down to Stark's Farm. This information I found in deeds that I have done on all the properties back to 1800. With this is the road deed and the trail, and you went to the river to get across to Durham, and you went to Lewiston to Starks. Starks has owned that right up through from that time era to now. And Mrs. Hassey was a school teacher in Lisbon. She was about 1900. She bought the house. But she retired somewhere in the 20s. They named the street Hassey Street, dedicated to her. Then in the 30s, Stenchfield bought the property with his mother. She had her kids. In the 50s, he built the house on the end on the right. Then in time, he gained my property through a brother-in-law, and he had a lawyer in his pocket that would come over to his house whenever he needed him. And he obtained my property, the deeds, on my deed it shows the lines he got each year. And then that's how I gave him access to that property. And the whole time, there's water and sewer in there. Town's been taking care of it. And the rest, I don't know when Ferry Road and Pine Ridge Road got built. And that just kind of went to the wayside and all grew in. And the 300 feet, the town's always taken care of. When I bought it 9 years ago, the sewer that was plugged, the town went up there, jetted it, had to hire somebody to clean the roots. The people at the end owned it, which everybody knows. You, from your house to your street, you have to take care of that. So they had to hire them to clean their pipe. So that, to me, is a commitment. It belongs to the town.
David, I don't want to interrupt you. Do you want to introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are?
My name is David Judd. I'm sorry. I'm nervous.
That's how you start the show. I
Be
just want to
nervous
make
for
sure
it.
everybody
Nothing to be
knows.
nervous at all.
I mean, you went right into handing this stuff out, and some of the people might have been like, all right, who's this guy? What is he talking about?
And
You know, you acquired some land, the town was taking care of it, now they're not.
right.
Is that what you're saying?
And they've walked away from it, and I just don't understand how they can possibly do that, because it is a county road. And even though it says that Stenchfield, he went and he took all our deeds and he put a line in each one of them, and it says the right side owns half, left side owns half. My land says I can do whatever to the road. That's conflicting to me. If he owned the road, he owned the house, he should have put he owned the road in his deed, and all of us have the right to egress and degress. But that ain't the way it was written. He just put it that way. To me, it's just not lines that should be in our deeds at all. It was because the town never knew of what he did.
Who was this?
Stenchfield.
Okay.
Stanley Stenchfield. He was a Harvard professor, and he knew law, and the lawyer. Because back in the 50s, you pretty much could invite a lawyer over to your house at any time. He told him what he wanted. He went to Lewiston, probably an old house, walked in, said, "Hey, Joe, what are you doing here today?" "Oh, file some deeds." Went out back and filed them. You know, and the town never knew that these deeds existed in this fashion. And the town took care of that road right through till today.
Again, David, I don't want to stop you from telling the story. You're basically wanting to know why the town stopped maintaining Hassey Street,
Yeah.
correct? Is
Yeah.
that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah.
You owned it for 8 or 9 years. You just built the house, correct, up in there?
Right.
Correct. Ryan, could you come in here and tell us why? I mean, we don't have Dennis here, but I mean, is there a time why we stopped maintaining it? Is there a reason why? I mean, do you know?
Yeah, based on, the town had been looking over the course of quite a while on some of these dead-end roads that have very few residences, and whether or not that they are ones that we wanted to continue to maintain or not. As a portion of that research, it was determined that Hazy Street was not a road that was ever adopted by the town or was the town's responsibility, and the town attorney had verified that point and then advised us that we should discontinue maintenance of the road that we didn't own, since it's basically against the state constitution.
And the liability.
Correct.
And the liability.
Yeah, there's an article, section, something that says towns don't take care of private ways. And I'm not here to dispute that.
Right.
But this road has always been a public road right from the beginning. He just took what was written on our deeds, not doing a title search. And I did a title search for him, and I gave him a house property showing how that disappears, how that becomes a county, the Newly County Road, and how that went back in time. And he didn't even take that advisement. It showed proof that this road belonged to the town. Just somebody did what they did, and nobody knew what he did. And there's nothing here that a document saying that the road was given to Stenchfield. I mean, if the road was given up, there should be an ownership. Shouldn't there be a document saying something that, and it should be somewhat attached to his deed?
Oughta, shouldas.
Now, you said you did a title search?
I've done title search on mine to 1800. I've done it on Mrs. Hassey's. I found hers. I went back to 1800. I've done it on Paul Sturgeon. I've done it on Paul, I can't remember his name. I've done it on the house out front because they were all Stenchfields, and I wanted to go back to 1800. And I'm running out of Androscoggin deeds. I got 3 more. I ran out of time. I got to get some more. Then I got to go to Wiscasset to finish the others.
When did it stop? When did maintenance of that road?
This year.
This year.
Here.
Part of that.
We
Part
sent
of
them
yeah. No,
sent
part of
a
that. That's
letter
from.
in November.
Yeah.
So that was my. That's what I.
This
Pretty
winter
sure it
season.
was going. Where this
Right.
was going from. So.
Yeah, I mean, it has town water and town sewer on it, and I think it's town's responsibility. It's theirs, not to relinquish that on anybody else.
Now, based on you being here tonight, Mr. Judd, Diane spoke to our legal counsel. What's his take on it?
They did a search on it, and they also have this document, and they said that there's nothing in there that states that the town owns it or ever adopted that road.
So-
Said it's private road.
The legal opinion at this point is it's still it's a
Private, and his advice
private.
is,
Private is to
Right.
just associated with that. Anything else, sir?
No, I mean, that's the deed to the road when it was.
No, I
accepted.
appreciate it, and that's why we did look at it, and would at least be able to hear the process out to at least give you an understanding.
It's not that we don't feel for you, David. It's that we had legal counsel look at it. They're the ones that really. I mean, some people think that we sit up here and run some stuff. A lot of times it's some guy nobody knows. We know him, Dan. He's not here tonight, but when they say it's not our responsibility, it's hard for us to say, all right, we're going to do David's yard. Not that we don't want to, because there's other people out here and out there that have properties that have roads out there that feel the same way about it.
But the 300 feet, my driveway continues 220 feet. That is private.
Right.
That's mine. The 300 feet of that road that's always been taken care of by the town.
Yeah, with
Heard with
the legal opinion at this point is that we shouldn't have been doing that to begin
Correct.
with.
Just
The
because,
liability was
because
there.
you're doing wrong doesn't mean that it's right. That's basically what the lawyer's telling us. That's why they tell us to stop, because if something happens, something's damaged, anything, they can hold us responsible for something we're doing that is basically against the law for us to be doing through our insurance. This is the same thing that you gave us, as they said, as Diane said, they looked up the same paperwork, read the same stuff you said, and their legal opinion says no, private. Even though they have water and sewer that comes down it, water and sewer comes, what do they call that, I'm trying to think of what it's called, an easement or a right-of-way because you have water or sewer. Again, it's hard for us to go against our legal opinion because something could come back on us. So again, as we said, I mean, I know what you're looking for. You're looking for us to continue to maintain the 300 feet, right? You're not looking for the whole 520. You're just looking for the 300 feet.
Yeah.
And the lawyer says, stop doing it. It's not ours.
But don't all roads have legal deeds to them, ownership to the town?
Based on
You guys wanna step up with
based
that?
on the acceptance, yes. And that what Diane is saying through the opinion is that the fact is there's nothing in record that towns actually accepted that road. Is that my understanding?
Ever. Since 1799.
And I know we've discussed this both at a workshop and
Yeah, well,
at the
that
vote where this came up.
That wouldn't be in the towns, because that came from Wiscasset. We were Wiscasset back then, till 17,
We were Thompson Borough from
Thompson,
1628 to 1799.
right. So there wouldn't be up
That's
here.
that's prior to, that would be prior to 1628.
Well, I had to go to Wiscasset to get that.
Again, David, we feel for you and we understand what you're looking for. It's tough for us to try to make any kind of call on that, or for myself anyway, after they tell you that it's against the law for us to do it. Now, if they said, no, you gotta keep maintaining that first 300 feet, you guys would still be plowing it and sanding it.
So if I take it to a lawyer?
If you come with it, right,
See what
you could
he-
spend your money, and if you want to get a lawyer to see if
what his
your
opinion is.
lawyer is smarter than our lawyer, by all means, you have that right.
Do you know, Diane, if Dan did any title searches?
Yes.
Okay. So with title searches, it would have come back
Somewhere.
somewheres along the line with one of the properties saying that the town owns it. And at that point, then you would have had to have gotten some sort of permission.
Well, the town owned it before Stinchfield put his,
But it would have come back in the title search is what I'm saying.
Correct.
because it was the Newly County Road. And some of my deeds that I found, God, they talk about that.
Then there must be a missing deed somewheres along the line because
Deeds that go different directions.
exactly, and that's where the confusion. When you do a title search, that's what's supposed to eliminate that confusion part of it.
Oh, yeah.
So it would have come back saying that the town owned the road. But if you did a title search and they didn't come back saying that, and we've done a title search and it didn't come back saying that, then we don't own the road.
I just have to find my deeds, because I know there's a few deeds that specify that is the Newly County Road, and the Newly County Road is a town road.
Well, it would be a county road. I mean, you need a document showing that the town accepted it from the county.
County.
Because right now, this document you give us shows it's from Lincoln County, and, that was the old county that was here. But,
Right.
If they gave it up and the town never accepted it, then it wouldn't be a town
It's
responsibility.
right.
So you need that document to show, a transfer from Lincoln County to Lisbon, the town.
We don't want you to spend any unnecessary funds to try to prove, because, again, you can spend your money any way you want, for your another legal opinion.
Yeah.
You want to come back with us and see if we
Well,
can,
I mean,
if they
it
can
stays private, I
make it a
mean.
little shinier, huh?
How's it go on taxes? I mean, should the, whatever.
That's a different question, David. We're talking about, you're getting off track now.
Because something that's been taken care of all this time by the town, which to me is just example.
Again, I don't want to cut you short, David, but our lawyer has said one thing, and if you bring another lawyer in here, you want them to talk back and forth to each other, again, like I said, it's your coin,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Judd. Next item, Twyla.
Order 2016-274, Brownfields Qualified Engineering Proposals.
For anybody that was listening, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the order that we had there about Hassey Street, there was nothing,
Nothing.
we're not going to take a vote on it because it's not to be discussed. I mean, it's,
Right.
everybone understands that, correct?
Mr. Judd asked to be on the agenda. That's his right as a citizen, which is why he was here.
Correct.
Sorry.
No.
Your turn, lady.
Thank you. Good evening, Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. You have before you the Brownfields Qualified Environmental Services, which is QEPs, as part of our Brownfields grant. That's one of the things that we need to do, is hire a consultant team that will work with us. And I do have before me two of our committee members. I think Marie's here and Charlotte behind me. They're both part of the Brownfields Committee. As you can see through there, we had budgeted in our plan. It is a $200,000 grant that we received. Our budget was $186,000 to do all of the work, allowing us some flexibility with having some funds left over. As you can see, we received 4 proposals. The team had interviewed 3 of them, the top 3, and they come in at different prices. And the one that we chose was TRC Environmental Corporation out of Scarborough. Their bid was the lowest bid, but it was beyond that. It was really the fact on how they go about the outreach, the community outreach, and that is really getting the public involved. It also, they work with the students, which we thought was another great addition to get the kids involved and learn all about environmental and the process of that and what that means. So it will be a good education piece for the students. I do have present today is Kelly Race. Come on in. Kelly is with TRC, and with her, and I'm sure everybody knows Jonathan Egerton with Pierce, Wright Pierce, and they've done a lot of work here. Jonathan is close by as well, knows the area very closely. TRC is also the official consultant firm or brownfields firm that the state has hired as well. So they're doing all of the projects within the state. So they are very familiar. They've done many, many projects. I've worked with Kelly Race when I did brownfields in Auburn as well, so I know her record and the work that she does. So if you have any questions in regards to that, I'm asking council to approve this firm, as well as give permission for the town manager to sign an agreement with them. And they're here to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Any questions, guys? Seeing none, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, 12.
Order 2016-275, the 2017-18 municipal budget schedule.
It's on page 71 of your packet. And then on page 72 is the school budget, school's calendar. What we did was we started with the March 14th. That's when the school wants to present their budget to the council, and then we work backwards from the date of the referendum in June. We want to stay with whatever the state's referendum will be, or the state's voting day in June. So this is pretty much similar to the timeline last year. And if you want to adopt it tonight, we can make changes later on, but as far as the dates to actually adopt all the budgets, those are pretty much set in stone because of the requirements for the public hearings and so forth. But we can add additional budget workshop dates.
Any feedback on what you guys see?
Yeah.
It's pretty well standard from what I looked from last year.
Pretty straightforward.
I know using January as the for instance, we agreed to 3 different workshops focusing on goals, so we'll be cutting a lot of those things going into the budget time frame, so I'm hoping that'll augment some of the discussions that came out of last year budget-wise to at least get an idea before that starts rolling. Anything that anybody would change knowing that there's a structure within this?
Only thing I would recommend is, I don't see him, and I know we mentioned it in our goals setting last time around, was that if we're going to do any sort of public hearings or workshops, we consider a weekend workshop, so that way it allows folks who can't do the Monday through Friday thing an opportunity to voice their opinion. We can modify that down the line. I'm A-okay with that, but I just want to put that out there on the record.
What time frame would you like to see that at? At the time we see it as an overview, or at the time after the public hearing sort of actually happened for the departments?
Exactly. I think after the public hearings for the departments, it allows for some feedback before we actually kind of go to the final push and say, hey, this is what we're going to put in. That's my thought.
Okay.
Somebody
Can
has
you
something different.
Give that some thought on time frame in that regard?
So are you saying, like, when we have the actual scheduled the public hearings, have it on a Saturday, or
Yeah,
have?
exactly. I have one of them on a Saturday. I know traditionally we try to plug them in somewhere on either Tuesday night or a Thursday night, and we get a pretty decent turnout. But I know there are people who we don't have traditional schedules anymore. Some people work evenings, can't make it out, but they want to get their opinion in. So
So like the June 20th, where it's the municipal budget public hearing, probably have that on a Saturday?
that wouldn't be a bad it wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe do that on a Saturday instead, just to see.
The 17th.
Yeah.
And likewise, I think on the municipal side, you're looking in that regard, probably something the end of April, 1st of May, holding something after the department hearings wind down the April 25th, looking at something municipal-wide that way.
Yeah, I just think that to present a different option so that we can see if we can get more public response. So no, it's something we've never tried. Let's give it a go and see if we can get some more folks, more feedback.
So what about the school budget public hearing? Do you want to keep that on the 9th, or would you rather have that on a weekend? Might be hard with the school, because they have theirs up to LCS, so I don't know.
Let's one of us reach out to council,
I'll
school
take care of
committee
that.
chair,
I'll take care of
Tracy, and find her take on that,
Yeah, I'll definitely do the follow-up and bring it back to you.
please.
Can do.
And other than that, let's adopt this as presented. If anybody has any other questions, concerns? I need a motion.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Thank you. Next item?
Order 2016-276, the street name proposal approval.
On page 73 of your packet is a request from Kathy Malloy, the E911 addressing officer, for a new 5-lot subdivision off Mill Street, which was approved by the planning board on April 9th, to access lots 1 through 4 to be a private road called Fox Snow Lane. And it meets the E911 standards and is in compliance with the town's road naming ordinance. We will be bringing the ordinance back to you to be updated, because it names a committee, which is against the law in the state of Maine now. You have to have the E911 addressing officer has to name the roads, not a committee, so we need to update the ordinance.
Who's
Now
that
becoming-
officer? Who's that officer for
Kathy.
us?
It's Kathy
Kathy.
Malloy, the assessor.
I assume, but
Can we add the ordinance part when we discussed doing ordinance reviews overall? Can we have
Put it
that
in with
discussion then? Yeah.
Yep, sure.
that wouldn't impact this at all, because
No.
it's accepted prior to making the change, correct? Any other heartburn on that? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item, please.
Order 2016-276A, 2017 OUI enforcement grant.
Good evening. The Bureau of Highway Safety has determined that the Lisbon Police Department is eligible for roughly $2,400 in OUI enforcement monies for the year 2017. So basically what that would do would give us the opportunity to run 8 4-hour grants, 4-hour details. So basically we're asking for permission to apply for and receive the monies.
Any questions, the chief? Need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Don't disappear, chief.
Again, when you come up, you should introduce yourself.
All right.
I'd like to give Chief 2 seconds to actually, I read his report this month. Why don't you, while you have the public hearing right here, actually talk about the citizen outreach for elders and give it a little pitch.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Basically, what we're trying to do is get an old program, give it new life, and what that is the Citizen Outreach Program, where we have volunteers come into the Lisbon Police Department on a weekly basis and make calls to area elders. Winter's upon us. Cold weather is here. It's dark most of the time, or at least that's the way it feels. And there's a lot of elders in our community that don't have family or friends to reach out to them on a daily or weekly basis. So what we are doing is we are starting this program up again it's kind of slowed down to the point where we have two people that come in once a week to make calls to area elders. And what we are doing is we're seeking volunteers, first of all, to come in and make the calls to Lisbon area elders, as well as, we're looking for people, family or friends that people know of that could use a call on a daily basis. So basically what it consists of is a volunteer will come in, we'll give them an office, they'll get the opportunity to look at the list, call the elders that are on our list, just check in with them, make sure they're okay, and that'll be it. It could take a half hour depending on how many people are on the list, or it could take a little longer. And it gives people just a daily contact. And, if you know anybody, some people would be surprised at how many people actually don't have anybody to reach out to them. And a week in between calls right now can be a very long time for somebody if they fall or slip. So we're getting the program up and running again. It's going to be on our Facebook this week, and I thank you for the opportunity to advertise a little bit. It'll be on our website and on the town's website the end of the week, beginning of next week. We're going to start at January 2nd.
Thank you, sir.
Hey,
I had
you-
no idea we had such a thing. So the fact is, anything we can do to help you promote it, by all means.
Outstanding. Thank you.
You mentioned Facebook and the social media piece. I noticed that you guys have really kind of made an effort there to kind of kick that back up, and it's
Yeah.
been well received. I think that when I've seen it, and I see the feedback that seems to come in on the posts that you guys put up there, are very positive, and so that's encouraging. Nice work there.
No, that's good. Thank you. We're trying to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on with the police department.
Back to the citizen outreach. How many volunteers do you have?
Right now, there are two.
And-
One comes in on Thursday evenings, another comes in Monday whenever they get the opportunity.
And how often are we making, like, if you had the max amount of volunteers you
If we could have at least 7 volunteers, it would be daily. Preferably you want a few more just because people get sick, people go on vacation. So it would be nice to have just a few more so we could count on.
How many people we reaching out to currently?
I'm sorry?
How many people we reaching out to currently?
The caller on Thursday night is only reaching out to 6 or 7. The one on Mondays reaches out to 2. They're not both calling the same group. So that's another thing that we need to tweak with the
Try to
current
get more
system.
people in that regard too.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Does I wonder if that meets student requirements for public service or scouts for that matter?
It's a need. You'll find a way to be able to do it. I mean, back in the day when we had the Monica Milham, by all means.
Right.
But in that regard, the need is still there. So trying to find a way to help him to be able to cover it, by all means. Yes.
Food for thought.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, go ahead and sign me up.
Outstanding. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll be in
Thank you,
contact.
sir.
Thank you, Mark.
Next item, Twyla?
Under other business, did you want to do that, or do you want to now go back to the public hearing?
Let's go right through another business.
Okay, under other business, town manager's report.
Just real quick, we started working on the Maine Municipal Bond Bank application for the bond for the paving. The application is due on February 15th. I have bond counsel engaged at this point, and we will be coming back to council for final approval to submit that application. We have met with the department heads, and we're working on what we're going to present to you on January 10th. And also, we've started on budget. And then, right now, we plan on having the audit presentation on January 17th.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. I said there's light at the end of the tunnel.
There is.
Yes, because the school committee has until the 31st to turn in their financials. So
We need to have that information for the bond bank application as well.
Yep.
That's all I have.
as part of the 10th, is Lydia possibly available to give us a recap of the first 6 months or anything that might
She'll
be just, I see her expense report. Give us the Reader's Digest version of what she sees the challenges or how we're doing positively. That would be great. Again, trying to keep her on our radar because we have a new finance director. We want to see her succeed associated with that moving forward. Next item, 12.
Is under B, MTM Center Playground Update.
My name is Mark Stevens. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director. It's my friend Ross Cunningham. He's representing PCL, Positive Change Lisbon, tonight. And I'm excited to announce that, I'll actually go back a little bit. Back in November, there was a a new sense of enthusiasm for the public to change or rebuild the playground at MTM. We have an old, dilapidated playground that's been outdated for probably the last 15 or 20 years. And back in 2012, I started putting into the CIP requests. It's never really gotten to your desks, but we've been working on a plan since 2012. In the last few months, there's been a new interest, and we have a couple members represented here today that have been meeting with the PCL and the rec department to come up with ideas on how we can get this moving forward. And currently we have about $2,600 in the playground account that we accept donations over a period of time. And we want to keep you informed, make sure that we're going through the right process, working with the town manager, the council, and other departments, working with PCL and the community, and to make sure we do this right and make sure it happens. And I want Ross to come up and...
There's a handout that I included with your agenda packet.
You don't have a handout?
Yep, we got it.
One of the reasons PCL got involved in this is I know that as a 501c3, we provide that fundraising ability that the town doesn't have. Town can't do a GoFundMe page, and we have some contacts in the business community that will help us pull this kind of thing together. Excuse me. The concern for us is twofold. One, projects in the past that have been strictly fundraising driven. People donate money and nothing ever happens, and people get a sour taste in their mouth about that. PCL doesn't want to be involved in that. We'd like to start something that has a commitment to it. We'd like to start something that we know is going to come to completion. That being said, I know that he's going to put it in his budget again this year for a capital improvement. What PCL would like from the town, if possible, is a letter of intent that you will support up to a 50% match on this playground. The playground budget right now is $40,000 for what you have in front of you. It'll go roughly where the old one is with some modification to the fence line. We do hope to save some money by doing a community installation, cut down the expense a bit. What we'd like from the town is a commitment of 50% match. And PCL will go out and raise the other $20,000 and essentially give the town a $40,000 playground at half price. So that's kind of what we're going to go out and do, but we want to make sure there's a commitment from you as well. I know that the budget doesn't actually get voted on until June or July. When's it? June?
The end of June.
End of June. I'm hoping that a letter of intent from the town will not only signify that you support that $20,000 investment, but gives us the leverage to go out to the business owners and say, look, the town's on board. We need your help to finish this project. And that is a huge statement for us to be able to raise the rest of that money. So we're eager to do it. We're willing to do it. We're just hoping for some support from you.
Go ahead. Anybody else?
So the question right now that I have is, so 20,000 match from us. No anticipated increase in cost at this point.
I believe we've budgeted a little high.
We're
hoping.
high end because we're looking at handicap accessibility.
Mhm.
We're looking at right now we're in a sand lot with
Right.
gravel,
Right.
and we're looking at 8 inches of fill, 8 inches of chipped wood right now because that seems to be the least expensive. But we're not at the very highest point, but we're kind of at the middle high range
Okay.
for what we need, size range for what we need for that area. We're looking at a grade 2 to age 2 to 12 customer, basically, if you will, because we could get something that's for high elementary or middle school, or we get something. We have after school rec program. We have preschool. There's a great need for preschool playgrounds in our community. So we got a wide range that we're targeting. So that's why the price range I think is a little higher.
And from a PCL perspective, we use that park for many of our events. This would benefit us greatly as well, which is why we're really interested in putting the effort into it to build that park in a more suitable fashion to attract folks from other communities to come in and use the playground, use the park. It's a beautiful location. So we'd like to see it improved.
So at this point, it's just a letter of intent is all you're looking for.
That's what we're hoping for. That'll give us the ammunition to go out to the businesses and indicate that this is a committed project that won't disappear off the budget in the next 6 months, and we won't wind up taking their money and not finishing it, because that's not something we want to do.
The only caveat that I would have to that is that because we're still not even close to the budget season, and I'm sure you understand that.
Completely understand.
I think that's just me kind of putting it out there for public consumption, that I think any one of us would be hard-pressed to say we don't approve this or agree with this project. I think we all probably feel pretty good about it. But at the same time, it's a priorities thing, and I know you know that. I mean, if we have to start looking hard at budgets, this could be one of those things that falls by the wayside.
I would
because
expect you to have a handful of meetings before you ever put out a letter of intent, so that you understand what your budget looks like, But if we could have something mid-February or early March, we could start fundraising then, and maybe have something when the budget comes through in July, we could be ready to build in August or September.
I think that's a reasonable time frame for us to at least to give us a chance to review. So yeah, I think that's as long as I was thinking not tonight, but certainly.
Well, you want to give
certainly,
it to me tonight. I'm not going to fight you, but I understand completely where you're coming from.
But
I think
that's
we'd
great.
want to look at some grant opportunities too.
That's the other side of it. You read my mind then for sure.
Absolutely.
April 18th, what are you doing? What are you doing, April 18th? Parks and Recreation are on our agenda associated with that for budget presentation.
I'll be here.
I'm expecting to see you in the audience.
I'll be here.
If you don't mind, because I think realistically speaking, by then, Mark will have a definitive budget flushed out that actually we're talking about, and we'll have a go one way or the other that night.
Might not be the mid-February that you'd hope for, but at the same time, it's in the spring.
Sure.
It's in the springtime where people still have money to throw out, especially donors have money to throw out because they're not quite into the through the second quarter yet. So still got a chance.
The other flip side of that too is that by that time the LCIP will already be fairly well flushed out. It's the last thing that we hear associated with that, but all the moving discussions that will be going on at the department head level, Mark will already have an idea on that too.
Right.
So maybe you'll scared up some grant money then, so you come back for a lot less.
Ongoing. We're going to be working on this every month for the next several
Yeah.
months. So
You guys are already hearing it. I know it.
I'll keep you posted.
Thanks for
Any-
driving
anybody-
on. Thanks for
anybody
driving on
else
this.
have anything?
That's much appreciated. I know the community appreciates it.
Keep up the good work.
Next item, please.
The department head written reports.
I think I called out enough people already tonight. Any questions on any of the content, though? Moving right along.
Audience participation for new items.
Any new items bring before the council? Seeing none?
But wait,
Oh, sorry.
Chief.
Just Chief.
Sorry. Chief Hagan, just want to update the council on something real quick. Policy precludes me from discussing personnel matters, but what I do think is important is there was a very public matter that was shared on, very public complaints that were shared on a community website this weekend. And a lot of rude and, basically rude comments were made about one of the personnel at the police department. So, again, I can't get into the basics or the specifics because it was a personnel issue, but I thought the council deserved to know that we've investigated the complaint. Nobody came forward. Out of all the complaints that were on this site, nobody actually ever came forward to us, but we investigated the main complaint that started the whole thing, and it was determined to be unfounded. The call was never actually made by our employee, so I thought the council should know it was unfounded. That call was never made by our employer. There was a call made, but it was by an employee of another town, not our officer. So I thought you all deserved to know that, and the officer deserved to have that said because he and his family had to put up with quite a bit this weekend that they saw on there. And to his credit, he didn't reply to it. So
No.
You should know.
I would only chime in there in that regard. I did see some of the traffic on the site. The administrator of that page did shut it down based on the content associated with that, and later published a note that if you have anything specifically regarding this, the place to not air it is on social media, is to contact the department head directly or the town manager to be able to address it so we can actually get it here. Passing off social media as government is not the best way to be doing business. It's slanderous at best. So I appreciate everything associated with that.
I'm sure the officer does too.
And more so is when the site gets shut down, just because you disagree with the administrator, realize there's a lot of real good information associated with that. Dean is not the enemy. It's frustrating that he had to actually field it because suddenly at that point you turned because you didn't feel that you were being heard there. It's anarchy on Facebook, and it's just irresponsible. So thank you.
I appreciate your time, and trust me, after 26 years of doing this, I don't mind people making comments, and it's not a big deal to me, but when one of my civilian personnel and his family have to be subject to that, I thought you should know the outcome of it. And I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Next item, Twyla.
Counselor communications. Did you want to go back to the public hearing?
No, I have one piece on the follow-up for legal. At this point, the town's lawsuit against the county, we are not appealing. We are under the opinion it's just a minor victory with no repercussions on behalf of the county's decision, with the unjust gain for the wages and everything else. But neither here nor there. Moving forward, there's better traction that you may be seeing something out of the LA area regarding a change of the charter and directing through the budget committee. But when I know more, you'll see on that. Peter Brand did share out of 300 billable days, it was something like 271 that the county's legal aid billed them on a regular basis to the tune of almost $200,000. I think the figure is 169,000 if I remember correctly, but his point being is well over 3/4 of the billable days that were available, they billed them for something. So it's just bad money I spent after bad money. Moving right along on that downer.
I got something.
Okay.
Sure.
I just wanted to thank the Public Works crew. You guys did a heck of a great job this weekend, getting it done around here and making sure that we could all get to and from our many different destinations. I know that's not always the opinion of all, but I felt like it was pretty good from A to B, especially on 196, and then some of the side roads, which usually take a while to get to. You guys did a great job, so thank you for that.
Next item, 12.
It's under appointments, 2017 council committee assignments.
I have one more council, just to actually talk with. I have nothing official. We're going to postpone that one. I'm getting the feedback from the various councilors what we're going to do, but we'll be prepared for that for the next meeting.
Okay. And then the civil constable appointment of Paul Carpenter. There's a Compertier from A Security.
I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Do want to just give a quick explanation what the heck we just did.
Yes.
I think that's kind of important. Diane was good enough to give me the breakdown of this earlier, so I'm going to go ahead. I called about this. So by appointing this constable, this person can basically, not a law enforcement officer, just can serve papers. So serve legal papers, and that's it. Not carrying a weapon, not doing anything like that. Just able to serve papers in different civil suits, etc. That's it.
All right.
Next item, 12.
We're going back to the public here.
Yes.
All right.
Can I just interject? For the sake of the number of people here, I'd like to refer to the rules associated with meetings tonight. In that regard, we have, I'd like to keep people's comments to the 3 minutes if we could. Opinionated, one trip to the podium, and not open debate with the council tonight to actually keep with the decorum rules. Just to actually get everybody to be able to be heard if we could. So, that said, I'd like to open the public hearing on medicinal marijuana, please. Anybody like to speak?
Those that speak, at least identify their name.
Please, thank you.
Residency.
Thank you. We've been doing poorly on that, and we've been reminded a couple times by the media.
My name is Don Phillips. I'm currently chairman of the planning board.
You asked me to not have you speak tonight, too.
I know,
That's funny.
but I can't resist. At the last and first reading of this, it kind of was a hearing, but not. It was decided to accept this so that we could have a hearing on it. Subsequent to that, the planning board authorized me to work with the council. So we had, for the public, we had a workshop. Planning board actually had a workshop with 3 members of the council. Would have been never mind the reason. It worked that way, but it worked that way.
Told you the posturing wasn't going to work.
Based on that, there were some discussions for alternatives, amendments, and that sort of thing. to what was proposed. And what this group or the planning board learned subsequent to this being offered was a lot from the case that was settled, the Briggs versus the town of York, and the fact that that case was not appealed. So from the standing of the planning board at this point, since that case determined that the use that medical marijuana effectively commercial uses were appropriately put in manufacturing, considered manufacturing, that's what this town codes enforcement officer has been doing all along. So if it gets too complicated to implement anything else, that particular portion stands and is enforceable as that and will continue to be, I'm quite sure, the same way, whether anything's adopted or not. There are alternatives, and I just wanted to say that. I don't know what the council's going to do tonight, but quite frankly, it doesn't matter to us anymore. So,
Thank you, sir.
Do we have an opinion from the planning board about, you have some sort of recommendation, whether you want us to, you want to stand back up for a minute, Dawn? And I know you just sat down and got comfortable.
I didn't get comfortable. No, based on speaking with the three of you, actually, there are a lot of concerns that you had.
Correct.
And although it was never the intention of the planning board to hurt people who are caregivers, it was the intention to regulate larger operations that aren't home occupations in the areas of the town that seem appropriate for business development. Nothing has changed in that thinking. So the recommendation, I don't have a recommendation, a formal one from the planning board, but I do think that if this thing died tonight, it wouldn't hurt anybody. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Don.
Anybody else? This is your time, by all means.
My name's Jason Smith. I'm actually a caregiver here in the town of Lisbon. My concern was a few of the town councilors and stuff had concerns about people moving like down to Main Street. Let's say if I wanted to move next to the library, there might be an issue with a large marijuana operation growing right next to the library, or let's say at the Moxie store. So I don't know if there's any regulations or rules that some people may want to start thinking about now, as far as the medical, but also as far as recreational, because that's a whole new step that's about to take place. I know me and probably some other people may be looking at getting recreational licenses in the town. So that's another option that may be put up. You know, where would we want a retail store other than just medical marijuana growers who are growing for 2 to 5, 3 patients, however many they may be, compared to a huge retail store that's going to be selling as much marijuana as possible. So I don't know what the options are on that, but it's just something I wanted to kind of throw out there, what I've seen, some of the obstacles that I've been up against.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Catherine Lewis. I'm the president of the board of the Medical Marijuana Caregivers Trade Association. So I represent caregivers and patients across the state. We have been reaching out to communities that are having concerns, reaching out to the town councils, code enforcement, everything, in helping to answer questions and to make sure that you know the difference between the medical program and the pending recreational. I actually brought a copy of, or actually 3 copies, of the medical cannabis law. It has the rules, the law, and a breakdown that's a little bit easier to read. If you go to the state's website, you can get the rules, but you can't actually get all the law. So one of our former board members, Hillary Lister, put this together for us, and I want to make sure that you get a copy to help answer questions. The other thing that we are putting on the table is a private workshop for anyone who has concerns and questions in developing ordinances in regards to the medical program or the recreational side. Just to kind of clarify a little bit of the misconception is right now Maine has approximately 40 to 45,000 patients currently with cards. We have around 3,000 caregivers across the state. And yes, there have been issues in the court system with York, but in most of the communities there have not been issues with the caregivers in the caregiver program. Most of the caregivers are growing out of their homes. They are not retail locations. They grow and then they go and they deliver to patients. They're not having increased traffic. They're not having increased crime because basically what they do is they cultivate either in their home or in a building on their property, and then they go and they deliver to the public, to their patients. They're allowed to service 5 at a time. And so you're not seeing in the actual neighborhoods an issue with the caregiving side. So I wanted to put that out there because I know that a lot of people think that because somebody is a medical marijuana caregiver, they're having an increased amount of people in and out of their homes and that there's thousands of dollars in cash. Well, believe it or not, we do have banks in Maine that work with us. So we do use the banks, we do pay our taxes, and there's a lot more to us as small businesses than the wild, wild west that some people may think that exists currently. So I just wanted to let you know that we are here to answer questions and to help you. There's also another one of our legislative committee members that is also on her town council, and they've put together ordinances, and we're willing to share and help with that.
Thank you. Step right up, folks.
Good evening, council members. Good to see you again. As many of you know, my name is Kendra Corsi. I am a 12-year resident and homeowner here in Lisbon Falls. I'm going to read you some excerpts of testimony that I have submitted to each one of you via email today. I have received 2 responses, so I know that at least 2 council members have received my email. Catherine is a colleague of mine as last town council member. Do you remember I said I'm going to bring some of my people with me? So I did that. I am also on the legislative committee for MMCM, and I'm the founder and director of CAMP, Cannabis Action for Maine People. My personal passion, as you know, is a nurse and has always been about patient education, so I very much enjoy educating the public on the myriad of scientifically proven benefits of medical marijuana. I've also been actively involved in the legislative process surrounding our medical marijuana laws in Maine for the past 6 years. I'm writing to you today to give my feedback on the medical marijuana ordinances 70-1 and 70-531. I am opposed to these ordinances and will outline the reasons below. Medical marijuana became legal in 1999. Since then, the medical marijuana program has been ever growing and changing through a legislative process with the need to meet the needs of Maine residents. At this time, there are estimated to be close to 40,000 Maine residents who have obtained their certification to use medical marijuana from the over 300 physicians in the state whom are writing certifications for patients. Although it is impossible for me to tell you the exact numbers, it is estimated there are over 3,000 registered medical marijuana caregivers in the state. I'd like to take a moment to clear up some common misconceptions that people may have about cannabis patients and caregivers. Cannabis is not physically addictive, and in the history of mankind, there has never been a documented death associated with this natural medicine. There are literally dozens of illnesses that have been clinically proven to be effectively treated with cannabis, and as many of you already know, cannabis has been proven to be a healthy, acceptable, and more desirable option for the management of chronic pain than opiates. In today's rampant drug addiction issues and ever-increasing deaths associated with opiates, cannabis has saved the lives of numerous people who have stopped their use of prescribed pain medications or opiates obtained on the streets and have substituted it with the use of cannabis. It has actually been clinically proven that cannabis helps people withdraw from opiate addiction as well. I have personally witnessed dozens of people's lives being saved by the using medical marijuana to come off of the life-threatening opioids that they were addicted to, many of whom started by being prescribed them by their physician. Cannabis has also saved the lives of thousands of young children with seizure disorders. Maine is the first state in the nation that now allows these children to be administered their non-smokable forms of cannabis, usually in the form of tincture or oils, on school grounds. Thanks to medical marijuana, these children have been successfully weaned from dangerous, heavily sedating medications that left them unable to speak, eat, or control their bodily functions. I have seen these children go from near vegetative states to walking, talking, and able to return to school thanks to medical marijuana. Maine has a remarkable medical marijuana program that sets the bar for other states' legislative actions, especially following the recent bill that was passed to allow children to use their non-smokable forms of cannabis on school grounds. I'm honored to be a small part of that, maintaining and developing the medical marijuana program here in our state. As you may know, Maine has clear guidelines for people who either grow their own cannabis medicine in their homes or have small business growing cannabis for other people. Medical marijuana caregivers must register with the state and are now tracked by the state to make sure that they are paying their 5.5% sales tax on their transactions in providing medicine to their patients. There are many rules set by the state that caregivers must abide by. These caregivers are considered small businesses and must also abide by the state mandates that are set for small businesses in Maine. It's vital that the operations be seen as small home-based businesses and be supported as such. Most of these caregivers do grow cannabis in their home. This doesn't come easily, however, as it's very costly and time-consuming to set up and run a cannabis garden. According to state law, medical marijuana caregivers are allowed to grow 6 vegetative plants and 6 flowering plants per patient. The maximum number of patients that a caregiver may have is 5. Therefore, the maximum number of flowering plants a caregiver may have is 30 plants. This does not count the 6 vegetative and 6 flowering plants that a caregiver may grow for themselves if they themselves are certified patients. If you're not already aware of this, please know that medicine from cannabis comes from the mature flower of the plant and not the leaves. That's a common misconception that people have that are not familiar with cannabis. It takes 8 to 12 weeks for a plant to finish the process of flowering to be ready for harvest and then to be processed into medicine for patients. Also, please be aware that for one typical round of cannabis oil to treat a cancer patient, more than 1 pound of cannabis flower is required. This most commonly takes many more than 6 plants for a full 90-day course of treatment for cancer patients. This is why it's important that caregivers are allowed to have the number of plants that they have, because while their 6 plants are flowering for a cancer patient, they have 6 more that can be put into flower as they're processing, so it never leaves a lapse of treatment for patients. The medicine for marijuana can range from dried flower that can either be smoked or vaporized, tinctures, ingestible concentrated oils, or even topical salves that can be applied to the skin. Some of these medicines have no psychoactive effect because there is little to no THC present in the cannabis plant. Some patients need plants high in CBD content, and some patients need high THC in their content to treat their illness. Every particular condition has particular requirements for treatment. Most caregivers are aware of these issues. For instance, it's been proven that most forms of cancer cells respond dramatically by literally spontaneously combusting when exposed to THC. This is a process known in medicine as apoptosis. This is how marijuana is so beneficial for cancer patients, aside from the fact that it helps with controlling nausea and increasing a person's appetite. There are, however, some forms of cancer that respond to higher CBD content. Different medical conditions require different compounds in the cannabis to be effective, and currently there are over 100 identified medically beneficial compounds in cannabis. Every day, medical research shows new ways that cannabis medicine can help people. Now let's talk about how medical marijuana impacts our town, because that's what we're here about. A common misconception that I've heard mentioned several times in these meetings is the potential for increased traffic in neighborhoods where there is a medical marijuana caregiver present. Catherine addressed this as well. I want to assure you that the vast majority of caregivers do not want their patients knowing where they live or where they grow their cannabis. This is for security reasons. Therefore, most caregivers arrange to meet their patients at the patient's home or another suitable location. In many cases, the neighbors surrounding the home of a marijuana grower do not even know that cannabis is being cultivated in the home. Most caregivers tend to use odor-eliminated filter systems in their garden to eradicate the scent of the marijuana being grown. Therefore, the argument of trying to control home growing for medical caregivers for the sake of decreasing traffic in the neighborhood is essentially a moot one. Another issue I'd like to bring to your attention is the fact that our citizens voted to allow for recreational marijuana use in personal grow here in Maine. This is predicted to be enacted into law sometime at the end of January. According to the initiative that was voted on, all people over the age of 21 will be allowed to grow 6 vegetative and 6 flowering plants for their own personal use. This is the same that's allowed in the medical program. If a person who owns their home or is renting their home and they have landlord permission, they will be allowed to cultivate their cannabis in their home. If there are multiple people over the age of 21 living in the same home, they will all be allowed to grow their plants in the same place. How can the town justify by trying to limit small business medical marijuana caregivers to only commercial or industrial zones when private citizens will be allowed to grow for their recreational use in their own homes? Also, how will the town officials be able to ascertain whether someone is growing their own cannabis for recreational use or for someone else as a medical caregiver? This is impossible at this time. There is no publicly available registry for medical marijuana caregivers. The only time that this information that can be obtained is through a court-issued warrant. Also, the only legal way that any public official can enter into a medical caregiver's growing area is also with a warrant. Is the town prepared to follow through with this process for every time they suspect someone to be growing as a medical caregiver in their home? Another issue that I'd like to clarify is what will happen to someone that has been found to be operating as a medical marijuana caregiver in the town for the time prior to when this ordinance may be enacted. I personally know of 5 caregivers whom are growing in their homes in Lisbon, and I believe there are quite a few more. I don't believe it fair to ask them to shut down their established business solely because the town planning board doesn't see it fit for them to be able to have a garden in their own home. Now we're hearing different from the planning board, obviously. I believe that that if this ordinance should be passed, currently operating caregivers should be grandfathered into the ordinance that allowed them to continue cultivating out of their own homes. Keep in mind that these small business owners have likely invested tens of thousands of dollars into setting up their gardens and will likely be fiscally impossible for them to tear it all down, find another place in a commercial zone, and set their business back up again. It is a misconception that cannabis caregivers make a large amount of money by cultivating medical marijuana. It is very costly to run an indoor garden, therefore having the capital to obtain a commercial space and outfit it appropriately for an indoor garden is extremely unlikely. I strongly feel as though the planning board and the code enforcement officer are making judgments about cannabis caregivers based upon misinformation and ongoing stigma associated with marijuana and not necessarily basing their opinions on current medical facts, which is why I'm giving you all of this information tonight. From what I have heard at previous town council meetings, the planning board seems to be pressuring the town council members to set this ordinance. I'm also concerned with the fact that the code enforcement officer has been openly telling people that caregivers are currently only allowed in commercial zones. This is inappropriate information, I find, to be disseminating, as there are no current ordinances that support this fact. I know this to be true because I called him myself a few weeks ago with questions about how recreational cannabis business will be handled in our town. He insisted that medical marijuana operations must only be in commercial and industrial zones right now, with recreational marijuana businesses in the future. It appears because code enforcement officer has been doing this, there is now pressure on the planning board to enact an ordinance to cover the code enforcement officer from what he has already been releasing as public information. This leads us to why we are here today in front of you, although it still remains unclear to me as why it's so important for this restrictive ordinance to be in place. In closing, I would like to say that if the town council does vote to enact this restrictive ordinance, it would likely be only the second town in the state to do so. There was recently a long court battle that was addressed here in York to address this issue when they voted to have caregivers only located in commercial zones. This was originally brought about because there was a group of multiple caregivers who were all operating in the same building, and the town found this objectionable. I personally know of 6 caregivers not involved in that particular group who were given no other alternative than to shut down their grows in their own homes. Several of them had to move away from the area so that they could set up another home-based grow in order to continue their occupational as medical marijuana caregivers. There are, however, many other towns whom are addressing the recreational aspect of cannabis in their towns, and I do believe it would be appropriate for Lisbon to address this issue with larger grows and with dispensaries. I think that it's been pretty well stated that medical and recreational are 2 different animals and should be addressed as such. I encourage the town council members to oppose this ordinance for the town of Lisbon. Let's encourage small business here in our town and show that we're educated, forward-thinking citizens of Maine and not basing our ordinances upon antiquated stigmas and lack of current information provided and proven by medical science. Thank you for your time and attention. Does anybody have any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Again, Jason Smith. I didn't read the agenda about exactly what the law wants to take place, but from what I've been asked, even if it is in a commercial spot, like Drapio's right on Main Street, I was still asked not to go to these areas, like Big Dags. That was another option. I was asked not to go to Big Dags, so I worked with the town. They gave us areas maybe like in the industrial park and areas like that. So I know Lewiston enacted different zones in their town or in their city. So in certain areas you can't grow, like in the apartment buildings, but in other areas you can. So that may be an option because, like she's saying, it's so hard to just up and move all of your equipment to another area after you've been doing it for 5 years. It's almost impossible. If they've been doing it all this time with no issues, I would imagine there may be no issues. But the commercial part of it, by saying you can grow in a commercial part, but you can't grow in a residential part, may not be the solution. Because if you say somebody can grow in a commercial area, when you're having the Moxie Day Festival come up and down Main Street with a 5,000 square foot grow there, I don't care how good the ventilation system is, you're going to smell it at some point in time. It's just the way it is. So I don't know, I mean, what you guys want to do with the commercial and residential part of it, but there's a lot more to it than just saying you can grow in commercial and you can grow in residential. And that's all. I just wanted to kind of put my 2 cents in there on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brian LaRochelle, Lisbon Falls. The first reading was interesting. We had a lot of interesting conversation. And tonight I wasn't planning on getting up at all, but there was stuff comes up about a code enforcement and planning board, and I don't think there was anything malicious ever thought of from a planning board or code enforcement. I think a code enforcement in town has a challenging job for monitoring businesses. We live in a community where if you want to cook cakes in your kitchen, you've got to have an approval by the state. You've got to get inspected. You've got to pay personal property tax. You've got to have liability insurance to bake cakes in your kitchen. You know, small occupation, great. It's what mom and pop stuff's all about. You know, that's where we all start. And I think the intent is to handle this as any business. I'm a firm believer in people doing whatever they want to do. I mean, I voted. I think recreational ought to be, to me, I just want people be able to do that and go to a liquor store and actually get drunk. And that's everybody's opinion. But the thing is in our community, whether it's commercial or non-commercial, if people, if you've got a small business in your house, you're working motorcycles and you got $3,000 worth of tools and you got a sign hung up front, you got to pay personal property tax on those $3,000. If you get tens of thousands of dollars of equipment and you're actually doing it to raise money, I think fair is fair. You ought to be paying taxes as everybody else on any business. I'm not saying it's not right or wrong, but it's just the way our economic system's built. So people that do business in town, I think one of the concerns that our town was trying to deal with, and I'm not speaking for the code or the planning board, is actually not mom and pops growing in their home for medical. I think that's just the way things are. But we start talking about bigger commercial grows for medical and bigger commercial grows for recreational. I think you do got to have some discussion at some point in time. And at this point in time, maybe it's not worth the discussion. But at some point in time, there are going to be circumstances where it's time to come in front of council, and there's going to be some hard decisions to be made. And unfortunately, the planning board's done a lot of research over the last year, sitting through some of those workshops. That's really just kind of getting flushed away at this point. But as a council, I just hopefully you actually keep your ears open and just actually pay attention that it's not actually the planning board or the code enforcement being, you know, the evil people here. They're actually just trying to keep your town safe and actually keep your commerce going legally. Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Closed. Next item.
Would be Order 2016-271, no, 270. The ordinance medical marijuana, Chapter 70-1 and 70-531, a second reading.
Discussion? Anybody here wants to bring that hasn't already been heard, said? Nothing?
I'm still at where I was
All right.
2 weeks ago.
Anything new?
No.
I think we're all in the same place.
Okay.
Again, we had a meeting about it. I'm sure some of you know, some of you don't. We talked about it. Basically, the three of us, along with planning board, we really discussed about the fact that the state's going to come down, and as you all know, the recreation's going to pass, and there's going to be a lot of stuff's going to change that we believe, the three of us that was with the planning board believe that, and again, it's something that we shouldn't even really be discussing because of the fact that in 30 days it's all going to go somewhere else. I mean, I had a guy that's in the state level that called me up and said, listen, because I had some questions, other stuff that I had to ask him about, and he said, that it's all going to change. You guys looked at York and you did this and you do that, and it's great that the planning board looked after it, and it was probably, I believe it was because of an ex-council member actually got them onto it, along with code enforcement. And again, we came to the discussion that, we took a first reading so that we could have this, so everybody come out to say whatever you got to say. And not that we're not going to have further discussion about this, because I'm sure it's not going away, but it's all going to change, and we feel that it should really be killed, because it's 30 days, 45 days, whatever it is.
We could
the
have
whole world. It ain't going to mean anything if you don't have to get a prescription for marijuana, because as he says, medical marijuana is only going to be for a few, and most of the medical people are actually going to turn over and become, if not, they can't be both, because that one's gone, they're going to become recreational growers. You're going to have very few medicinals, because chronic pain, just like aspirin, you don't need a prescription to go get aspirin. They're not going to need a prescription. They're not going to fill it. And some people, there's positives and negatives to that, but that's the truth that's coming down the pipe. So again, as far as my recommendation or my view is to kill it and wait to see what the state really does about the recreational. And then if we want to talk about getting down the road, once the recreational actually comes into place, about where you want to open a box store, and then we'll talk about, okay, we're not even talking about medical anymore, we're talking about recreational. So if you have caregivers that are out there that are still taking care of patients in their neighborhood, in their homes, again, it's not going to, I don't even know that it will exist. That's what my guy on the state level is trying to tell us. Again, it's a sad thought, because there's a lot of people out there that don't want it to go that way, but I try to tell people that if you see what's coming down the pipe, you know recreational's coming around, you ain't going to have to give up what you got going on right now. I don't know how the state's going to come down with the rules and the laws, but as far as I'm concerned, we should just, thanks for all coming out. We've heard whoever wanted to speak, Dawn and the planning board for all they've done, but that's my speak.
I saw a response from Catherine. I don't mean to put you on the spot, forgive me. That it looked like you were strongly kind of saying, no. Do you want to chime in?
I don't want it that way either.
I think that maybe you have you have a good insight in the law, whereas maybe we do not, and we could certainly benefit from your expertise here. So.
Well, I appreciate the killing it.
Yes.
Either way, it happens.
Right.
However, I want you to know that right now I'm working with people at the DHHS, the CDC. We're working with the legislature to protect the medical program. And the reason being is that regardless of whether recreational happens, it is happening, the medical patients that are truly using this as medicine are still going to need the hand-holding. They're still going to need the tested product. They're going to need the non-smokable forms. They're going to need the capsules, the tinctures, the suppositories. They need things that are customized to their medical conditions. And so currently we are working to insulate the medical program. Yes, there will be caregivers that flip over to the recreational side. They will need to apply for a recreational grow license or a retail license or a social club. And building the ordinances around that is going to be very important for every community in any new industry in development. But I don't want you to forget that, and you yourself as townspeople, to protect your medical caregivers and your patients, because I'm dealing with cancer patients, end of life, elderly using this instead of opiates, children with seizures, veterans with PTSD. Those people are not going away, and just because they will be allowed to use adult use cannabis does not mean that they will be going that way. They're still using this as their medicine, and we have to keep that in our forethought when we're making ordinances, because we'll still be there for now and hopefully forever. But when you're making the ordinances, remember that as far as the medical program, towns are not supposed to make anything more restrictive than what the state has already put in place. And the state does allow for the caregivers to grow in their homes. Now, if a caregiver comes into town and they want to put in a giant commercial facility, well, of course, you're going to deal with that business as you would any other big commercial facility, whether it's medical or recreational. But for people who are growing in their homes as medical caregivers, that's a little bit different. I grow in my home. I went to my town. I got a occupancy permit. I pay my equipment tax on all of my equipment that I've put in as a medical caregiver. So that is also something that the town does benefit from already, and I'm sure that you have community members that do that here as well. But I just want to make sure that we understand that right now, in 30 days, the medical program is not going anywhere. You still have a medical card to go to a caregiver. Caregivers will not be allowed to sell recreational. They'll have to go and get a retail license if they want to. So they'll still only be able to sell to a card-holding patient. And again, I will be available by phone, email, or in person if anyone, as things develop. If you have questions, please feel free.
Thank you for letting me put you on the spot.
That's okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
I want to thank the planning board for all the effort they put into this, and I hope you guys don't feel like you're just rejected, because I think you did a lot of hard work, and I hope you guys do look into the recreational aspect of it, and how we're going to have to create some kind of framework for that going forward, because that is going to be more of a business and a very different situation from what we have now with the caregivers.
Sure.
Despite how you, or however you vote, I know how I think you're going to vote. However, the intention, and when we started with this, way back when, however we got started with it, was to do just what she said, not to restrict personal, residential, or any of that stuff. It was the larger, even though collectives are not allowed, but the larger operation that was through different ordinance entrances or whatever, is in the same facility. That was the only intent. So it really doesn't matter. I think this is pretty covered the way we're going. The other thing is, and it's much more serious, or for the town, and I think I sent some information earlier, and I don't know what you want us to do, but recreational is something that's going to have to be managed somehow. Every town that we know of around here seems to be dealing with it in one way or another. Some of them have created moratoriums. Some of them are working on it with the idea of coming up with regulations. Quite frankly, I don't know what the regulations are, neither do you. So we need to find out what they are and figure out what it is as a town that we want.
Well, we got to get written law first.
Yeah.
Before we can even start that battle.
Well, I don't know. There are there are 6 towns out there, or 7 or 8 towns that have already created moratoriums. Personally, I think moratoriums are a little early, because you've got 9 months after the thing is enacted before anything essentially will
Short answer, yes.
Pardon me?
Short answer, yes.
Yeah.
It's premature.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think
Moratorium, maybe. I don't know.
I don't think any one of us is looking to kick the can down the road. Once we have something hard and concrete to work with, we'll start working with it. But I think that we have to
It might
wait
be
till-
worthwhile asking the town, as I mentioned to some of you, that it might be worthwhile asking the town on the Survey Monkey that we paid for, what the opinion of how it should be handled is, if you want to involve the town.
It's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Don.
Anybody?
Let's do this.
Need a motion. What's that? I'm hearing no motion.
I make a motion that we reject the ordinance as written.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
have to have a roll call because it is.
Yeah, I think it has to be a roll call because of the
Because
change.
The second reading.
Yep.
You're right. Thank you.
Ordinance.
All right.
That's the key. That's the key.
Now, because of the change, the way it's changed from the language from what was actually up there, do we want to, can we kind of step back from that and maybe, rather than make a motion to change, just make a motion and then the second, and then we vote on it?
What do you mean? I'm saying
From a language perspective, we changed it. You didn't say I make a motion for the ordinance that stands, you make a motion to reject that
It
ordinance.
hasn't been changed.
It hasn't been
Okay,
changed.
good, so that's what I'm.
Yeah, that's why I was like, what are you
Okay.
talking about? No,
There's
What we're seeing
we'd have to
tonight
have
is
a
what
whole
Dawn
new
presented last week.
That's fine, that's fine.
we'd have to do, if we amended it as we had discussed, we'd have to have a whole new first reading and then a new public hearing announcement and then do this all over again. This is as it was originally.
I get that part. I just, the
So-
way that you presented was, I make a motion to reject. I just, making the motion, then the vote would have stood as the rejection. So I think we're all in the same place for
Make
where
the
we're gonna
motion
vote.
to
Yeah.
reject
same
the
vote.
ordinance
Yeah.
as
If
written.
you had no motion, the item was still dead.
Right, 6 one way, half dozen another.
So you mean to not adopt it?
Correct.
Correct.
Are you
Roll
ready
call.
for a vote? Okay. Counselor Albert?
No.
Wait, you're saying,
Wait,
you-
yes.
you want yes to me, no, right?
Hold up. Yes, thank you. Good Lord.
I knew he didn't
Oh,
get
there's
that.
so much stuff you have to read and understand sometimes.
problem with negative motion.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was, right there. I'm like, dude, just put the thing, anyway, go. No, I'm going to say yes. I want to reject the motion to adopt.
Just for the record,
There we go.
it's the
There you go.
paralegal that
The
put us
right
on the
answer
mind
is
trip.
yes.
It's the paralegal that put us on the mind trip.
I'm sorry.
This is on you.
Yeah.
That's the legal
Anyway,
field for you.
next.
let's move on to the next one so we can just
Counselor
put this into
Crawford?
bed.
Yes.
He's not taking it no more than he.
Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Brunel?
Yes.
And Counselor Kobe?
Yes.
We have 6 yeas
Now that we're done.
and no nays, and the order passed to not adopt.
Correct.
To the point that was actually made, is
That's
to say
all
with that,
right.
I will say that
It's the same.
we are looking into a moratorium. It is premature to be able to do so, and
double legal
more is yet to come when the state has what they're doing sorted out. I'm going to leave it at that. Next item.
Is to adjourn.
I make that motion.
Second.
All those in-
So this is exactly what I talked to Diane about today at noontime. I called her and
6-0,
talked to her about it. It's like,
order passed.
so do we want to do, and it's exactly what I said. It's like, I said, reject it? No. Just let it go as, either don't, or go with it as it sits, and we'll all vote no.
Yeah, but I wanted to make it so that the audience knew what we were doing.
What?
The fact of the matter,
legal
the
field.
fact of the matter was, I
Sailboat.
was like, dude.
Oh.
That's all good.
Hey, did you give us cards?
I'd only support a